Good evening. It's the 26th of March, Saturday, and I just listened to part of a video about the discoveries about what really the Bible actually says. And these people are coming up with some interesting stuff, and I realized that they're not right. Now, I'm not saying I have it all right, but I did tell you we would read the Bible together. And I've been hesitant. I've been reading the Bible myself, trying to figure out what am I going to say? What am I not going to say? How can I avoid offending people? And I realize at this point that it really doesn't matter. That we have to get into this and we have to understand it. And we may not even get out of the book of Genesis. I realize that that's where most of the meat and potatoes are. These other folks are pulling up some truths which I understand. One of the pastors that I hung around in the middle of the country made a claim that the Bible was written about Israelites. It was written by Israelites and for Israelites. It only mentions other peoples as they interact with the Israelites, and it's not a history of the world, it's a history of the Israelites. Well, that's quite true. However, it's also true that the Bible has encoded in it stories from previous Earth ages. Okay? So I'm going to be stopping a lot, and we're going to be talking about this stuff quite a bit. And I'm going to try to upload these to my new channel, my second channel, Awakening Israel. And the idea is I want to awaken my brothers and sisters in Israel. We're going to get into everything possible in this. Now, we're going to deal with the book of Genesis in the proper name version of the King James Version of the Bible. That's the one we're going to use on this. I'm more familiar with the NIV and the original King James than I am with this, but I've got to get into this and I have to understand it. There's also the New Revised Standard Version for English, which I rather like as well, primarily because it has a modern version of the English, which apparently are translated from different texts than what the original King James apocryphal books came from. So I want you to understand the Bible's written at several levels. It's also telling us about the past, the present, and the future. And quite often it tells you about more than one past and more than one future. And I know a lot of people out there have been trying to prove that, the Sumerian peoples, that was after Adam. That's hogwash. Things are written in the Bible for a reason, and it's time for us to start discovering these things. So I'm going to proceed to tell you about this stuff. So Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Pretty simple, heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, there's a theory called the gap theory, in which they're saying there's a gap between these two verses, verse 1 and verse 2, and that there's a large piece that needs to be filled in this gap. Really, what's going on, in my opinion, is that this is the beginning of this earth age. There were previous earth ages in which the world was flooded as well. So this idea that God is not going to destroy the earth by a flood, that's how he recycles it, folks. And so here we have, in the beginning, not of the world. Well, maybe this is. Maybe it fits. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, okay. Maybe that's the beginning of the world. Created the heaven and the earth. That's pretty straight ahead. Now, verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. What, the deep oceans? And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Oh, now we come into other traditions. Tagalog. The Filipino tradition It's named after a bird that hovered over the waters and formed the lands of the earth according to their traditions. So, the Spirit of God, if we look at the Filipino tradition, it's a bird hovering above the earth. It's the wind from its wings forming the earth below, moving the waters out of the way. Okay. As I said, it's only about Israelites. Filipinos are not Israelites. However, I do believe that the previous age, there was a lot more life in the Pacific area that came from there and survived. I believe that's where the Phoenicians came from in that water world and survived things and brought their wicked stuff forward. Okay? Got that? And God said, verse 3, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Pretty straight ahead. Important. God said it was good. He saw the light, that it was good. Verse 5, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. What I want to point out is that this sounds pretty straight ahead, but it also isn't quite the way I would be defining a day. When does a day start? So here, and this is important because this is parallel construction we're going to read through here and you're going to see it. God called, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So we're going from evening to morning, which sounds to me like we're talking about the nighttime. Yet it's called the first day. So there's a little bit of inverted stuff here. I don't know what it means. I'm just pointing it out. One of you youngsters out there probably is going to figure this out and teach me a lesson, and I will appreciate that. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." That sounds pretty straight ahead. Sounds like land in the middle of the waters, maybe even a continent, island or something, and it divides the waters from the waters. Okay, that's fairly straight ahead. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Hold on now. Divided the waters which were under the firmament. So we have a firmament above, and we have waters which were under the firmament, okay, from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. That doesn't make much sense. Perhaps this firmament is referring to a barrier around the earth. Perhaps it's referring to an ice barrier around the earth. Just an idea. Remember, we're reading this with great flexibility. We're brainstorming this. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Again, we have evening and the morning being the second day. It's kind of backwards. We usually think of the morning at the beginning of the day and the evening at the end of the day. So I don't know why that is. Again, it's inverted. That's something we need to pay attention to. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Well, gee, if you have this firmament above, now you have dry land. Was that firmament dry land? Was it a barrier of some sort? I mean, like an ice dome above the earth, possibly. Something that would create a really nice greenhouse inside that would allow for a thicker atmosphere, support greater oxygen, and maybe even keep out some of the radiation that cause aging and deterioration on the surface of the earth, that cause aging. So, and God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together to one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. So was this the making of the oceans? Could be. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. It is in italics, meaning those were added to the original Paleo-Hebrew in order that the sentence would make sense in the English. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth, and it was so. So basically we have the beginning of kind after kind. We have species that reproduce themselves, reproducing kind after kind. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw it was good. Interesting that we give the gender he to these things. We have herb yielding seed after his kind, the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. Just an observation. The key feature here is it's kind after kind, and it's good. God loves his creation the way he created it. And verse 13, and the evening and the morning were the third day. Again, we have evening and the morning being the day. Interesting how that continues. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. So basically, God invents his clock, if you will. God sets things in motion, and he sets things in time. And that's important because our solar system goes around the Milky Way galaxy at particular times. And we also cross above and below the equator of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Mayan calendar that was supposed to show that the world was going to end on Christmas Day in 2020, that actually was when we crossed, our solar system crossed going above the equator of the Milky Way. And so that's an important thing to understand because everything is in balance. Everything was planned a long time ago to make all of this stuff happen. None of this is not very much of this is by accident. Human willpower, that seems to be by accident perhaps. But as far as the movement of the galaxy, our solar system and all of that, it was set in motion. And a lot of things that happen to humanity occur on the same days. And those are important days that are in this book. We're ordered to celebrate those days forever. And really big things happened on those days. We're going to cover that. And let there be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. Stars, moon, sun, firmament of the heaven. We are told space is empty. Well, maybe there's something pretty firm up there, holds everything in place. Maybe there's a lot of cosmic radiation, or space does. Right now, we're going through a dusty area in our galaxy, and we've been here many times before. It takes a long time to go around. It's not just a year going around the Milky Way. I'm going to just take guesses that it's about 12,500 years, or that might be the period to cross the equator of the Milky Way and take another part of the orbit. So it could be 25,000 years to get around the galaxy. I don't know. Maybe it's the 125,000. That's something to look at. The most important thing I want you to understand here is that the Earth ages are determined by our movement around the galaxy, around the Milky Way. And when we hit this particular zone that we're entering in now, where there's more cosmic radiation, which we could also equate to being dust. It's another perspective. A couple of things happen. One is that the Earth gets bigger, it gains mass, and as a result, it slows down a little bit, and our day or our year in particular, gets a little longer. We know that because of the orientation of buildings of old structures, showing that the basically informing us, well, the brainy ones that can figure this out, that the year was 360 days. Now it's 365 and a quarter days, approximately. What I want you to also understand is that we're coming into the time in which this dust irritates our sun. And that's a key thing in terms of the end and the beginning of an Earth age. So what does the sun do? Well, that's down there in the Mayan literature as well, the carvings in the stone. The sun gets irritated, and they depict it as the sun throwing snakes of lightning bolts to the earth. I believe what happens is the sun goes micronova, thus beginning an ice age. It can start very instantly. It can start by instant freeze. I think there's other ways it can start, but I'm just taking an educated guess on that. I believe it's a solar flare that heats up the earth and brings us to at the close of an ice age to end it. I'm basing that upon the research of the great physicists. Can't even tell you their names, but I can tell you that much. And Genesis 1:15, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So we're getting more differentiation as we go along. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Firmament of the heaven. I thought space was a vacuum. I don't think so. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life, and fowls that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So the fowls are going to fly in the atmosphere, which is regarded as the firmament, and that's heaven. Interesting. And interesting here, more interesting is, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life. Oh, and our scientists, hypothesize that all life came from the oceans. Very interesting concept. The Navajos will have a lot to say about that. They do, actually. They say that we came from the sea, from fish, and Navajos will not eat fish because they don't want to eat their ancestors. They don't. That's why the fishing is so good on Navajo Area Reservation, because they don't fish it. They don't eat it. Great fishing up that way. And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Okay? It's good, right? God likes it. He loves it the way he created it. And kind after kind. So in other words, Yahweh loves it the way he created it. He loves his creation just the way he made it, just the way he made us. He doesn't want any disturbance in that order. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. So, be fruitful and multiply. It's a great command. You're supposed to reproduce. and the evening and the morning were the 5th day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind, and it was so. Again, his kind. So we have the general pronoun, masculine pronoun. The phrase beasts of the earth, that has some peculiarities to it. And we have some people believing that it referred to the early humans, the early species of humans. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind. Does that mean after God's kind or after the beast's kind? Could be either. Be open-minded. And cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. It's kind of a repeat of the previous verse, so there's a reason for a double witness. We're supposed to pay attention to that. I don't know exactly what we're supposed to learn from it. Maybe you have an idea. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Boy, that creep stuff sure does repeat quite a bit here. So man is made in the image of, in our image. I don't know what the root word is for God here. I'd have to look that up in Strong's Concordance. That's worth doing. Mine is packed away. I should grab it. I don't know how to pause this thing and start it up again. There's a couple of buttons here. I suppose I could learn how to do that now. So God created man in his own image. That word own is added. So now we know God's creating man to look like him, take after him. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. So we have men and women created in the image of God. This man might be the earthy man, might be the original inhabitants that have been here for about 1.75 million years. Or it could be the more noble man that comes about just a little bit later. Could be referring to Adam kind. And God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. That's pretty much title to it. That's pretty much ownership to it. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. So, this is what man was to eat. Herbs, fruit, okay, vegetarian. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. So back then, all these creatures, everything was eating nuts and seeds, I guess. You know, at least herbs that bore seed, and trees that bore fruit. And God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. The most important things from this is that we know that this was at the beginning of an earth age. We can imply from this that there have been several earth ages before in which the earth had to be remade. Okay, so this was just another one of those cycles that we go through every 12,500 years, or every 25,000 years, or 125,000 years. Those are the years I'm giving you from the scientific research that we have. Not going to cover that today. This is going to be strictly about the Bible. And so we have God creating it just the way he wanted it. And he loved it the way he created it. It was good. He likes it the way he created it. He wanted to keep it this way. That's an important thing. Kind after kind. Now, if I try to put race after race, that's not what it says to me. If I put species after species, that's more like what it says. And that's why I lean towards the word species being a more valuable word than race. If you go to other languages like Spanish, they'll ask you what race a dog is, for instance. What species? In the United States, we'll say what kind, what breed. Okay? So those are the important things in there. Now, I do want to get into Genesis 2 today. I really want to cover this stuff. Genesis 2:1. And there's a critical verse in here that I was thinking of the other day, and I have to give it to you. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth, when they were created. In that day Yahweh God made the earth and the heavens. That fourth verse is very important because it tells you that there's life in the heavens. Generations means mortals. So you have mortals in the heavens and mortals on the earth. So here's your first mention of life off the earth, of aliens. Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. That's very important. It's a little bit more straight ahead in the King James than in this version. Okay. And Yahweh God specified here. So we know it was Yahweh God, Yahweh Creator Father God, was the one active in all of this creation. Okay? Those are important things. I think I'm going to call it right there, and I'll pick up from this later on. I don't want to go very long on these. I'm going to try to upload this to my new channel. I apologize for going so slow. I probably should just read through it and then go through the key features of these passages. I think it's important for you to understand the beginnings. The beginnings are all in Genesis. Now, these modern guys who are trying to talk about aliens and the Bible are trying to malign the Old Testament God because he's a mean God. They don't understand the truth. They haven't read the Bible in enough context, and they're trying to make things out of it that it's not. However, I will agree with them when they bring in the fact that we've got the old Sumerian stories being retold here with different actors, different names of characters. So we have some borrowing here, and we have a record here of times before this earth age, peoples before this earth age. And that's very important to understand that we're not going to the end of the world, I don't think. But we are coming to the end of an earth age. And the birth of the earth is, there are pangs with birth. The earth will be reborn. And it's according to Yahweh God's schedule. He set this up a long time ago. He designed this earth to recycle itself, to recycle the surface. And I do believe that he created feedback mechanisms within the earth, primarily in living organisms, but perhaps also even in the rocks. I think there's feedback mechanisms within creation that keep us in check. And if we're screwing up, I think that launches some of that stuff. So that's why I believe it's possible that we might be able to go through this earth age into the next earth age without a lot of catastrophe. We don't know what the transition is going to be. Perhaps it's going to be one of those destructive periods in which only 10,000, 30,000 of us are left. Perhaps only those who go to the caves will be left afterwards. We just don't know. We know that we get reduced, and we know that we come back and we replenish. And if you had to ask me what Earth age we're on, I would tell you, go drive through Navajo area in Arizona, look at the mountains, and look at the folds in the mountains. Look at the layers. Each white layer, I believe, is either a 12,500 or 25,000 year layer of sandstone, limestone, from previous floods, previous destructions. And then every fifth layer is a dark basalt layer, meaning a whole different kind of destruction, which probably involves the volcanoes really going wild on the planet. That appears to be every fifth of the cycles. Maybe 125,000 years that occurs. But look and see the folds. See the layers upon layers. There's your geological record. And we also have got ice core samples from the glaciers and from the North Pole and South Pole. And there's radioactive isotopes at certain levels of those. And that's how we date the micronova of our sun. That's how we date the activity of the sun and the location of where we are according to God's time. And at this point in the precessional clock, we're at approximately 6:30. We've been at this spot many times before, and we've got a pretty good history. At least modern science has a pretty good history that's breaking through as to what we've been through at this particular spot before. So this is nothing new under the sun. This is just the way Creator Father Yahweh set it up. I'm glad we're getting started. I'll be back at you with another one of these readings pretty soon. We are going to go all the way through the book of Genesis.